We recently asked our clients and past clients if there was one thing that we could talk about to help them in their business, their personal, or just overall life, what would it be? One of the things that rose to the top was how do I stop doing what I don't want to be doing? For us, that's how do we create a pattern interrupt? How do we create healthy habits to replace the ones that are on that happen by default?
Welcome to another session of Inside Outlooks. I'm Dave Gorham, a mindset coach with a passion to make you show up as a superhero.
And I'm Matthey Walley, a mindset coach with a passion for being just a little bit cooler than Dave. Join us as we take a look inside so we can change the world around us. And away we go.
What do you hear when that question's asked? I think that's the first thing that comes to my mind. How do I stop old habits? That's the question?
Well, I think it's a universal thing, right? That we all do things we don't want to do. I'm not going to do this anymore, or I'm going to stop doing that. But then we find ourselves doing it again. I think it's human nature, right? Mm-hmm. It's hard. Our brain's hardwired, or that habit, whatever it is we're trying to stop. It's got a roadway, a pathway in the brain that's been created, and we just keep going down it.
Yeah, like a blind spot, or not really a blind spot, but like automatic.
Because I think because to deviate from that pathway, we have to get uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. By uncomfortable, I mean doing something we don't usually do, or not doing something that we usually do.
Well, and that goes to the word habit, right? As soon as I hear a question, and this comes from being a coach and practicing coaching, as soon as I hear a question, I immediately want a follow-up question is that the right question you're asking? So do we know what the word habit means when we're asking about, how do I stop these old habits and create new habits? Do we even understand what a habit is, right?
Or do we look at it as a habit sometimes? Or in our client's case, do they look at how do I stop doing what I keep doing that I don't want to be doing? Well, it is a habit, right? Whether a habit is consistency or not.
Yeah. A habit is consistency, and the consistency that we're talking about here is doing something. A habit also is not doing something. And we've already determined in our coaching that being indecisive or not doing something is a choice and is actually doing something. So in the case of the habit, I'm doing something bad in a bad habit. It's a void of doing something good. So we can actually just switch that paradigm a little bit and start down the path of, all right, it's just one thing that I need to introduce.
Right. Or eliminate.
Well, once we eliminate it, it creates a space to add something.
Sure.
Maybe what they're also asking is, how do I continue on that habit?
Yeah, I think that's a second layer for sure. I mentioned in the intro that we look at pattern interrupts, and so when I think of pattern interrupts and I think of what we're talking about, I think of so if I have a tendency to ruminate on something, right, on whatever, it could be on something I did in the past I wish I hadn't done. It could be on something I want to do but I haven't found the courage or the motivation to do it yet, or it could be a relationship and whatever, but I keep just turning it over and over and over. So how do you interrupt that? You stand up and do jumping jacks for 30 seconds, right? Go out and run around your house. Go dive in a, freezing ocean for a polar plunge, since it's a day after New Year's. But do something, right?
You did that this morning.
Do something that's different. And that could be as simple as, I continually snack in the kitchen. Okay, so what's the pattern interrupt? Get rid of the snacks. If they're not there, if you're not there, then you have to make the choice to get in the car, drive to the store, get a snack, whatever, rather than just being able to take it. So it's finding ways to interrupt those things because, what we're talking about ultimately is building awareness, right? And the only way we're going to build an awareness that we're on default again is to have something that makes us go, oh, wait a minute, it's happening again, right? I wanted to snack again, but I don't have any snacks because I threw them all out yesterday.
And that's interrupting the pattern and asking for your brain or your consciousness or even your body to create something new. So I understand what you're saying. I understand what you're saying about the jumping jacks, and I understand what you're saying about the remove the snacks. I don't know if the audience understands what you mean by the jumping jacks because it sounds silly.
Well, it does sound silly, but when you think about it, one thing is you can't have a positive and a negative thought at the same time. So if you kind of look at that as a black and white sort of example, well, it's really hard to ruminate on whatever you're ruminating on if you're sitting here doing jumping jacks for 30 seconds, right? It's a pattern interrupt because it stops what you were doing, what you were thinking. No different than if you're staring at your computer for 4 hours and you're just worn out. If you get up, go outside, breathe some fresh air, walk around the house, and come back, it resets you to some extent.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's just literally that one, the jumping jacks, is a literal physical pattern interrupt.
Yeah,
I
you get
remember
a
a story
response.
about a coach who people come in. This is a very expensive coach. That most people in the world could never afford to coach with. And first coaching, sometimes people would sit down in his office and they would just start. And they'd have tears streaming down their cheeks. And he would just stand up and go, "Stop it! We haven't started yet." And they go, "Oh, I'm so sorry," and whatever. And he goes, "That's your first lesson. You can choose what you're thinking about. You can stop what you're doing at any point." But that was a pattern interrupt, right?
Yeah.
And so it's something to remind us. I talk about, all our lives we've driven down that same road. It has a long sweeping right turn. It's just default. That's the way we've gone. Every day of our lives, here's this long sweeping. I want, as a coach, to help you realize there's a left turn there
That you never seen.
that you've never seen before. And once you see it once, the next day or the next week or the next month, you may see it, but you may see it after you've passed it. Or you may see it just too late to turn. Eventually, the awareness creates this, "Oh, I could go that way instead." It doesn't mean you have to. It just means now there's a choice. And most of the time with the things we're talking about, with patterns, with habits, it's the inability to see an option, or it's a refusal to take an option because it's uncomfortable.
Yeah, and which is a choice, right? I start to think about in hearing what you're saying, what the client's question is about, creating new habits to stop bad habits. What are you thinking about? Like, what's your self talk?
Yeah.
And once you realize that even self talk is a choice, it may just come up seemingly mysteriously out of thin air. The choice at that point is a choice to pay attention to it or not. Like you're saying with the left turn, it's a choice to pay attention to it. Once you choose to pay attention to it, now you can choose to pay attention to it more. And then the options are abundant.
Sure.
Whereas keeping to a bad habit with negative self talk, you limit and limit and limit and limit yourself to the idea that you are trapped, a victim of the negative or bad habit.
Sure.
When in reality, you're actually part and parcel of it. You've made a choice. If you could step back and have some awareness, or when you step back and have some awareness, the options then start to really compound and become abundant. A
Yeah.
left turn here. Well, there was a right turn before that too. I wonder what would happen if I took the right turn before, the long bending right turn. There's options everywhere, and the choice to witness them is the first choice to creating a new habit.
Yeah, and then I think the another layer of that is sometimes we have to take an action that's uncomfortable. In other words, I want to be in better shape. Well, I should go to the gym, but I don't really want to go to the gym, right?
Right.
And as a good friend and fellow coach of mine, I heard her say last week or the week before, sometimes we have to behave our way out of what we thought ourselves into,
Yeah.
right? And so to me, that means we have to take action. And sometimes that action is not the normal action for us. And sometimes it's words. Sometimes, I think affirmation. So here's what can I do? What can I do to stop the habits, or to create a new one, or to pattern interrupt? Well, it could start with something as simple as an affirmation every morning, because those words, believe it or not, if you say them often enough, you start to believe them, because let's see, what's the quote? Your cells eavesdrop on your
Consciousness?
conversations, something like that. So and the word abracadabra comes to mind. What does abracadabra mean? Do you know the answer to that, Dave?
I don't. Someone asked me earlier, and no.
Yeah, that was me. As I speak, so shall I create.
As I speak, so shall I create.
I become my own prophet, right? If I walk into a meeting and say, this meeting is going to suck, it's going to be horrible, it's not going to go well, I'm becoming my own prophet because, my subconscious is going to look for all the evidence to support
Yeah.
that statement. Just as I walk out the door and go, this is going to be a crappy day because it's raining, it's miserable, whatever. Yeah, it's going to be a crappy day. But if you find a positive thought, which can be an affirmation, it can be, whatever, today's going to be a phenomenal day. 2023 is going to be a phenomenal year. Whatever that is, just that little bit of a positive thought is, to me, the opposite of our default, because we don't by default go, hey, I feel awesome today. It's a choice.
Yeah, it's a choice. It's a choice. The idea there I'm hearing is what you focus on grows,
Yep.
which sometimes feels trite and overused or just so simple it can't be true. And yet when you practice it, it's miraculous from the standpoint of our human nature is to collect evidence to support our beliefs.
Well, the simple
Regardless of the
analogy.
belief. Yeah,
What's that?
regardless of the belief,
Yeah.
whether it's a negative or a positive belief. If we're choosing to believe it, and it's a choice.
Yeah.
We're not talking about facts here. We're talking about beliefs. It's a choice, and it's human nature. You'll find evidence to support it, negative or positive, depending on what that belief is.
Yeah. Yeah, my simple analogy to go along with that, which you've heard before, is if a football team is in the locker room right before the big game going, did you see the size of those guys? They're going to crush us. Does that hurt or help their chances of winning the game?
Yeah.
Right? And it's the same thing. If I walk out the door thinking it's going to be a crappy day versus it's going to be a great day, again, my subconscious is going to look for the evidence of that. And it's going to set us up for success, or it's going to set us up for not so much success. So it's being purposeful about what we put into our brains, right? What we take in is what we're going to give out.
Yeah.
Right.
So from that, if we're going to wrap that up for the audience, what is pattern interrupt, and how do we change a bad habit? Say change a bad habit. How do we move from a bad habit to a good habit? We're really talking about action.
Yeah.
Right. We want to be motivated and inspired, and just like your jumping jacks, we want to move to action because that gets us into an actionable and physical activity that will interrupt our pattern of a negative behavior.
Break it.
Therefore, giving us room to infuse a little inspiration to get us to motivation. And if we don't have that motivation yet, it's more action.
Yeah, and I was thinking for a minute. I'm like, well, okay, maybe there's a time where it's not about doing something; it's about not doing something. Like, let's say a workaholic, right? All they ever do is work.
Yeah.
But to me, the jumping jacks work, and I know it seems silly, right? But the jumping jacks work in just about any scenario as a pattern interrupt. Because imagine if you're getting into the same conversation and the same argument you've had with a spouse or a sibling or whatever all the time, and you just started doing jumping jacks with them in the room, in the middle of it.
Yeah.
It would interrupt everything, yours and their pattern,
Yeah.
to the point where they would probably look at you like, what the, what's wrong with you? Or the workaholic that stops work and just does jumping jack. Or the person that's not doing enough that's been sitting on the couch, or the person that's ruminating, whatever it is. It's something. That's one example of it.
Well, the other example is an affirmation.
Yeah.
An affirmation can feel very silly as you're saying it.
Sure.
Again, for the audience, from a topic standpoint and what to do after this video is, from a journaling aspect, write down an affirmation is what you aspire to be, right? And you're talking about it as if it is true today. So write those down. And just like a jumping jack in a room full of people that you're trying to pattern interrupt, your affirmation is going to feel somewhat maybe uncomfortable, somewhat silly, somewhat like a lie. And the more we plan from that aspiration and that, well, it could be a mantra, right? Move to a mantra. The
Sure.
more we start to build evidence to believe it.
Yeah, and so I think we need an example of affirmation. So I'll give one, you give one, and I still do this every day. Mine starts with, "I'm beneath no one and superior to no one," because for me that's a reminder that of my own value, right, my own worth, and it's a reminder that no matter who I come in contact with in a day, I'm not superior to them, right? We're all human beings, and we all deserve love, respect, and attention.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I like it. So, well, one of mine, oldie but a goodie in my head, is I am independent of the good and bad opinion of others. And for me, it resonates with me because I do attach myself to opinions,
Sure.
whether they're good or bad. So if I think about that when it comes up from self-talk, whether it's good or bad, I can remind myself that I'm actually independent of that. That's just feedback coming at me, and I can choose what to do with it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I don't remember the exact quote, but there's a Shakespeare quote that I will paraphrase that basically words have no meaning until we give them meaning.
Yeah.
In other words, and you know my poem slash children's book on its way on blue hair is if somebody came up and said your hair is blue, they could tell you that 100 times until you actually questioned it and went in and looked in the mirror, but it's not going to be blue. The only way
Right.
it's going to be blue in your head before you look in the mirror is if you believe it.
Yeah.
And so if they tell you you're smart, believe it, don't believe it. It's only true if you believe it.
All right. So then the motivating factor here is do something, people.
Yeah. Change the way you look at things. The things you look at change. Thanks for listening, and remember, your outside world is an inside job. See you next time. Hey, can we get 2 more over here? Make them doubles.